retirement, this is the focus. And let me give you again the overall context of this. Here's a snapshot of today's retirees. 90% of today's retirees are getting a Social Security benefit if they're at the minimum age, which is 62. You might say, what about the other 10%? There are still government employees who are not covered by Social Security, and they usually represent those who are retired and are not getting a Social Security benefit. And it constitutes, on average, about 40% of their income. And if you're an average employee, the Social Security replacement rate is about 43%. Replaces about 43% of your last year's earnings. So it's a major part of today's retirees' financial security. About 21% of their total income comes from assets, but only 56% of them have assets. So just look at that number. 44% have no retirement assets, no savings, no home equity. It's really, Social Security is pretty much it for them. Pensions constitute less than 20% of the total, on average, of retirees' income. 30% of people who are retired today get a private pension. As I said yesterday, that number is shrinking, as you heard from our panelists earlier. That number is, other than government pensions, that number is going to disappear. And 14% today get public pensions. And then we say retired, but many of them are still working, part-time jobs, self-employment, and that constitutes about 17% of the earnings of today's retirees. And about 1 out of 4 retirees are still working in some way. So they've got some source of income. And then other sources, including public assistance, including something called SSI, that constitutes about 3% of retirement income. Now, these numbers come from a profile of older Americans done in 2005. It's ripe for updating, and it may actually be in the process of being updated. I'm not sure, but I don't think it has changed to change that much. Over 3 out of 10 beneficiaries, and this is the number that's staggering, get 90% of their total income from Social Security. Another 6 out of 10 get more than half of their total income from Social Security. So it is really a bedrock of financial survival for many, many millions of people in this country. And it keeps more than 13 million elderly people out of poverty. Without Social Security, the elderly poverty rate would be 48%. You'll get a debate today as to what is the elderly poverty rate. I think it's understated. You hear estimates of 12 to 15%. I'm from New York, in case you're surprised to discover that. Really? We've just done a New York City special elderly poverty index, and we show in New York City 19% of New York's older residents are poor using this adjusted index. So we have not solved elderly poverty. People think we have. We have not. And the signs are that it's going up. So this is another issue that I mentioned yesterday. Will presidential candidates talk about Social Security? Well, I don't know. I sure hope they talk about poverty. And if they talk about poverty, then they're going to have to talk about Social Security because of the trend in poverty among the elderly. But as a motion picture, tomorrow's retirees, 97% of boomer families will receive Social Security. So that 10% who aren't getting it now goes down to 7% who aren't getting it. 3% rather aren't getting it. So it's up from 90% of today's retirees. The average Social Security income for my generation and for many of you will be higher, which comes as a surprise to people. We will get more in Social Security than our parents and grandparents did. And that's due to greater rates of labor force participation by women and, at least until recently, rising real wage growth. Now, we've been set back there significantly since the recession, but the Social Security trustees' projection still is that real wages will grow by about 1.5%. And that's a magic number. If that number is true, then prospects for future retirees are better than we would have thought. But it bears close scrutiny to see if it turns out like that. And then there's the negative, and this is something I think we have to be aware of. Just under 10% of today's retirees are below the traditional poverty level. But if you take a more realistic poverty level, which is 125% of poverty, that adds almost another 7% of today's retirees to the poverty statistics. And if you look at subgroups of the elderly, it's still staggering. Single older Americans have much higher poverty rates. If you're a single male, you're 3 times as likely to be poor as a married male. And if you're a single woman, you are 5 times as likely to be poor as a married woman. So these numbers are still staggering, the subgroups that still experience severe poverty in this country. So let's talk about some of the features of Social Security's retirement benefit from a financial planning perspective. Number one, it's portable. It stays with you from job to job. All private employers play by the same rules. You can't make a deal and say, I'd like to opt out or I'd like to pay a different rate. That doesn't work. And there's no risk of leakage. Unlike today with a 401k plan, when someone leaves their job and they get a 401k plan, if they roll it over into an IRA, there's no leakage. But what do a lot of people do? Wow, that's the most money I've gotten in one check in my life. Yeah, I know I'll pay a 10% penalty if I don't roll it over, but you know what? I got a lot of things I've got to do with that money. And some of them are necessities. I've got to send a kid to school. I have no other way to do it. I'm going to tap into my retirement savings. That's known as leakage. Social Security protects you from yourself. It doesn't let you borrow from it. It doesn't let you get it early and use it. So to that extent, it's a very paternalistic program, but it's necessary to have that to protect people against short-term decisions that hurt them in the long term. It's guaranteed, as I said earlier. It is a government obligation under current law. They'd have to change the law, which they can always do. It really represents a generational compact where each generation of workers puts money aside knowing it's going to pay the benefits of current retirees in the hope that future generations will be willing to play by that same agreement. And that's always where you've got tension, where each generation is saying, why am I paying into this? I may never see a dime. And that's where the struggle is to convince people that it's in their own self-interest for them to contribute, even though the bulk of the money is going to pay today's retirees. And it is what's known as a defined benefit, not a defined contribution. It's governed by rules that determine what your benefit is with no regard to investment performance, unlike a defined contribution plan where the investment performance drives the benefit. Life expectancy risk, because it's guaranteed to be paid over your life, it offsets the risk of living too long. And Social Security should have known that from the very beginning, because the very first recipient ended up living, I think, to her 90s, when Social Security's life expectancy for women at 65 was maybe 4 years. That was a warning sign that people could be playing with some of the actuarial assumptions here. But as you can see, it extends over that life expectancy. And as I said yesterday, the debate to possibly raise the retirement age, which will be a serious debate, is based on the premise that we're all living longer, and why don't we take that into account? The facts are we're not all living longer, but someone did the math and said if we had indexed the retirement age when Social Security was put in 1935 to average increases in life expectancy, anybody want to take a guess what would the retirement age be today if we had done that? Anybody want to take a guess? 72? Do I hear higher? 72. Do I hear higher? 81. All right, do I hear lower? 78. It would be about 78. So consider if that, and that sounds like a very rational proposal, right? Yeah, why don't we just index it? Well, if we had done that, 78, can you imagine that being the age which you would start, get a normal retirement benefit? It's inflation-proof, and the cost of living adjustment is really critical to the long-term value of Social Security. It's not appreciated today because we've had years of allegedly no or low inflation. But in the 1970s, late 70s, in 1 year, Social Security recipients got a 14.4% cost of living adjustment. Now, we hope we never see those days again, because that means there's a lot of oil prices were very high, inflation was rampant. But this is a very important protection. Now here, there was a proposal that a lot of us were concerned about because it was done under a very technical guise that kind of made you feel this can't be a big deal. Anybody ever hear something called the chained CPI? So the White House developed this new consumer price index. They called it the chained CPI. And the way they explained it, they said, look, if the price of, let's say, health care is going up very high, Social Security recipients will substitute a lower priced item for that because they're rational. We don't know where they came up with this notion that people can substitute lower priced goods for higher priced goods to offset inflation's impact on them. So, and they call it the chain CPI. I thought it was because they said, let's ask how much an older person would spend if they were chained to their bed and couldn't spend money. So this is the chain CPI. So it was mind-boggling, but the White House really went to bat on it. And this is another case where the Democrats in Congress said, absolutely not. We're just not going to let you do this. It would have hurt the most poor of the elderly recipients of Social Security. But it's not dead yet. It's still out there. People are talking about it. But right now, this cost of living adjustment, if anything, you could make the argument, as the American people say, it's too low. The cost of adjustment is too low. It doesn't reflect that older people do spend their money in ways that have higher prices, health care, home heating, transportation. So there's been a push for a special CPIE for the elderly that would be substitute for the current cost of living adjustment. I'd say keep an eye on that. That's something that might have a chance of seeing the light of day. Now, the Social Security Administration. There really is good news with the Social Security statement. How many of you look at your Social Security statement when you get it every year? Okay, this is great because it really is a tremendous tool. It used to be you had to ask for it. Now you get it automatically. And it really is the type of thing I tell everyone. As soon as you get it, drop everything and read it. First thing you want to make sure it's accurate. Because if there are missing years or low paid years and you know you made more money, the burden's on you to tell Social Security, hey, wait a minute, this is wrong. And they'll work with you. They're very good that way to try to correct any errors. 125 million workers today over age 25 get it automatically. It really is a wake-up call when you look at the numbers. It helps you put Social Security in perspective. I find it an engaging way for financial planners to begin a financial planning process by saying, let's start with what we've got in Social Security, and then we'll go up from there. It's one of the most effective public information tools, I think, that the Social Security Administration has. So that's the good news. The not as good news is there are earnings errors, so you've got to be vigilant in reviewing it. 0 years can kill you. They really can kill you. You need 35 years of earnings, and every year you didn't work, there's a 0, which reduces the average earnings. 78% of baby boom women will have fewer than 35 years of earnings. This is a real issue for women, and there have been some proposals that would let women get some credit for child-rearing years or other times in their home, out of the workforce, because they're taking care of someone else. Again, this has been around a while. I don't know if it has a chance, but there's more and more people talking about trying to correct this negative effect on women that Social Security has in the benefit calculation. The benefit statement is in today's dollars, which people, when they sit down with a financial planner, will usually try to project things in tomorrow's dollars. This doesn't do it. You have to do it. And as I said earlier, it's missing the lump sum values for survivor benefits and disability protection. I still encourage you to go on the website. It has a superb retirement planner. You can do a quick calculation for a rough benefit, a much more in-depth online calculator to look at projected earnings and adjust the benefit, and then you can do pretty comprehensive what-if planning. There are others out there. This may not be the absolute best, but it's free, and it's probably a good start if you want to begin to play with it. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have gone on the website and actually played with any of the calculators? Oh, this is great. Any feedback on it? Do you find it helpful? Anybody say, I couldn't understand it? What's been your experience with it? Overall good? I think each one has to do it on their own and then merge the two. I don't believe they've adopted a two-user approach, so each one has to do it on their own. Problem with families, yeah. It's probably not as accurate on that aspect, but I would encourage you to use it. At least it's a good starting point, I would think. So, key planning question: when should I begin collecting my benefits? There are two aspects to this I want to talk about. One will use the video, but one is something that's now it's the thing with financial planners. How many have heard of file and suspend? Okay, here's the deal. As I said earlier, your current spouse cannot start collecting until you collect. Now, for most married couples, the wife will get a higher benefit on her husband's record than on her own. But she can't start until he starts. So what can he do? This is in the law. None of us knows how it got in the law. I've been trying to find out, but it's there. All I can tell you is a member of Congress, this was important to him, his financial situation. That's why it's there. But we don't know who that person was. Under the current law, the husband can file for Social Security at his normal retirement age. 65 if you're born at one age, 66, 67. He files. His wife then files on his record as his spouse, and then he suspends his benefit. So she's collecting, even though technically he hasn't started collecting. He filed, and that's good enough. She starts collecting, and then he delays until 70. And why does he delay? Because as you're going to hear from the video, when you can wait till 70, you have a 32% higher benefit. It goes up 8% a year due to something called the delayed retirement credit. So this is a big deal. This can result in collective benefit increases. I've seen some figures where suspend and file and suspend has increased the overall benefit over a lifetime of several $100,000. It has that big an impact. The problem with it is no one thinks it should be in the law. So it could be just a matter of time before Congress says, ooh, wait a minute, let's get this out of here. Again, no one thinks they could get it out retroactively. So being grandfathered becomes the key. The moment you can do it, if it makes sense for you to do it, then you do it. But some people, it just doesn't work because they can't suspend. They need the Social Security. And who do you think takes the most advantage of this? Higher income retirees. They've got the financial planners who are on top of this. They show them how to do it. So it is having a disproportionate impact on those with the most income. But it's there, and if it's there, financial planners will say, my obligation to my client is use every device legally available, and this is legal. It may be questionable, but it's legal. So that's one way to answer the question, should I begin collecting? This is that you file, but you don't collect. You file and suspend. The one that affects more people, though, is this issue of when should I start my benefit? Not considering the impact on my spouse, considering me. In the old days, when I would do retirement seminars all around the country, I would often have someone from the Social Security Administration present the Social Security part of the seminar. I like to show the people in the seminar that the government is doing something that's user-friendly. And they were all very good people. The public affairs people all across the country were good, solid people. But here's what they would say. Take the money and run. The sooner you can file, file. And at that time, it wasn't that bad a statement because the delayed retirement credit was very, very small. It's now increased. And as we're going to hear from the video, everything else being equal, as the video says, the longer you can wait, the better off you'll be. So why don't we switch to the video and take a look at that.